The vast majority of secret societies either do not exist at all or lack the real power and influence often attributed to them by those who believe in the mystical and are fascinated by the mysterious. However, in history, there was one secret society that actually had significant influence, albeit not for a long time. This society left a bloody mark on the history of the United States. Today, we will talk about it and present you with 10 interesting facts about the Ku Klux Klan. The very first thing to note about the Ku Klux Klan is that there were 3 different generations of it throughout history. These 3 generations existed at different times and had variations in their ideologies, as well as their methods. The first Ku Klux Klan emerged in 1865 in the state of Tennessee, shortly after the end of the American Civil War. During this war, the northern states, where slavery was prohibited, were pitted against the southern states, where slavery was still legal. The northern states emerged victorious in the war, thereby subduing the southern states and abolishing slavery. This outcome was met with dissatisfaction from many Southerners. The defeat in the war and the significant changes in their way of life were particularly distressing. Slavery had been an economic cornerstone in the southern states, where crops such as cotton, sugarcane, and tobacco were cultivated on plantations, with the labor force consisting primarily of enslaved Africans. After the Civil War, the former slaves were freed and even granted some civil rights, which greatly upset former slave owners and racists. It was during this period that 6 individuals, all former soldiers, came together. They held racist beliefs and were discontented with the new order of things. They decided to form a secret organization, which they named the Ku Klux Klan. There are several theories regarding the origin of this name. It may have derived from the ancient Greek word kuklos, meaning circle, or the Latin word cucullus, meaning hood. There is also a theory that Ku Klux imitates the sound of a rifle bolt being closed. Additionally, the Klan adopted various rituals and ceremonies from the Order of the Sons of Malta, an organization that essentially parodied Masonic rituals. Importantly, it should be noted that the Ku Klux Klan did not immediately resort to terrorism. In its early years, their actions focused on intimidation rather than violence. They would dress in ordinary clothing but with hoods covering their faces and approach African American households at night. They would request a drink of water from the homeowner and, if served in a cup, would insist on a larger container. They would then proceed to drink from the larger container while secretly draining the water into a concealed leather bag. After drinking several containers this way, they would claim they couldn't drink anymore due to having died during the Civil War. They would then burst into laughter and disappear into the night. In essence, the early Klan members were more like pranksters engaged in role-playing games. Let's return to our secret society. Over time, the Ku Klux Klan saw a growing number of people joining its ranks. The mystery and mystique surrounding this community drew more and more individuals. Gradually, the Klan transformed from mere pranksters and role-players into a truly terrorist organization. During the night, they set fire to the homes of African Americans, often with the residents inside. They also carried out abductions, assaults, and killings. At times, they would lasso African Americans, tie them to horses, and drag them through the streets before killing or even burning them alive. The Ku Klux Klan did not have a central governing body, although there was a nominal leader, which I will discuss later. In various states and cities, Klan chapters emerged spontaneously, but they operated independently of one another. At the global level, there was no centralized control. Instead, individual chapter members committed these horrendous and brutal crimes. Members of different Klan chapters carried out these terrible and violent acts. While some members continued their nighttime escapades, wearing white robes and terrifying people, the number of jesters within the Klan dwindled, while the ranks of the merciless terrorists swelled. Furthermore, their attacks were not limited to African Americans. They also targeted white Christians who supported African Americans in any way. Typically, a Klan member would warn their victims before carrying out an attack. They would send them an orange peel or an oak branch with leaves. This was a signal for the person to leave town within a day, as everyone knew how ruthless Klan members were. As for their objectives, they targeted not only random African Americans but also various political figures they disagreed with. Additionally, they interfered with elections. The reason for this was that African American men had gained the right to vote. The Ku Klux Klan intimidated African Americans to deter them from voting for their candidates. If African Americans still went to vote, Klan members might kill them. Ku Klux Klan members had a penchant for cruelty and a fascination with fantasy. Hence, they devised an intricate hierarchy within the Klan, reminiscent of roles in a fantasy role-playing game. The individual who assumed the role of the formal leader of the Ku Klux Klan was referred to as the Grand Wizard. Assisting the Grand Wizard were the Grand Exchequer, and a circle of advisors known simply as the Genies. The states they operated in were not called states, but kingdoms, and each kingdom was governed by the Grand Dragon. To assist the Grand Dragon, there were 6 Furies. Kingdoms were further divided into provinces, each overseen by the Grand Giant, with 4 goblins serving as their aides. Within the provinces, there were smaller units known as lairs. The leader of a lair held the title of Grand Cyclops and had ministers or counselors who carried titles such as Grand Vizier or Grand Sentinel. It's noteworthy that among these fantastical titles, there was one called the Grand Turk. The origin of this title, whether it was meant to represent a Greek or Spanish origin, remains uncertain. However, the primary responsibility of the Grand Turk was to conduct initiation ceremonies for Klan members. All the top positions within the Ku Klux Klan were elective. The Grand Wizard, the highest-ranking official, was chosen through a vote by the Grand Dragons. In turn, the Grand Dragons were elected by the Grand Titans, who were elected by the Grand Giants. Ordinary Klan members were referred to as vampires, with no added titles. The Klan also introduced a system of passwords to identify one another. For instance, Ayak meant, "Are you a Klansman?" A positive response to this question was the password Aquia, signifying, "Yes, I am a Klan member." In casual conversation, when 2 strangers met, one might ask something like, "Isn't Mr. Ayak living nearby?" If the other person was a Klan member and understood the reference, they might reply, "No, he doesn't live here, but Mr. Aquia does." Furthermore, the Klan adopted new terms for everyday objects or concepts, all beginning with the letter K. For example, clock art referred to a teacher within the Klan, calligraph indicated a secretary, and klexter denoted a guard, among many other similar terms. Now, let's return to the history of the first Ku Klux Klan, which terrorized black people and essentially took control of the entire South. They referred to themselves as the Invisible Empire of the South because they indeed wielded power there. The formal leader of the Klan, known as the Grand Wizard, was Nathan Bedford Forrest, a former general of the Confederate Army. However, it's important to note that despite the nominal structure with all these Grand Wizards, dragons, and cyclopses, many Klan chapters acted independently, doing whatever they pleased, sometimes engaging in activities that tarnished the Klan's reputation. Surprisingly, some Klan chapters even resorted to common robbery for profit. Furthermore, unrelated criminals began wearing white attire during their attacks on stores or travelers, pretending to be Klan members to strike fear into people's hearts. Anyone could put on a hood with holes for eyes and claim to be a Klan member. In response to this turmoil, the U.S. federal government dispatched the National Army to restore order in the region. Local authorities and police were seemingly unable or unwilling to do so, perhaps because some of them were sympathetic to the Klan. The U.S. government contacted the Grand Wizard, Nathan Bedford Forrest, and ordered him to disband the Klan. Remarkably, he agreed to do so and issued a decree to close the Klan. He claimed that he made this decision because the Klan had lost its original purpose and had transformed into something entirely unclear. However, not all Klan members obeyed the Grand Wizard's order. Many simply ignored it and continued their illicit activities. Nevertheless, with the arrival of the Army and additional law enforcement, they faced increased scrutiny. In the end, the Klan's activities gradually declined, and the first iteration of the Klan ceased to exist in 1871, just 6 years after its inception. In 1915, which is 44 years after the dissolution of the first Klan, a 3-hour film titled The Birth of a Nation was released in U.S. theaters. This film was based on 2 novels by the writer Thomas Dixon. In the movie, it depicted the original Ku Klux Klan of the past. However, it's essential to highlight that the film was highly racist. Black individuals were portrayed as ruthless bandits, unprincipled criminals, and a menace to society, while members of the Ku Klux Klan were portrayed as gallant, selfless, and kind knights defending the weak and their country. Most of the events depicted in the movie, and consequently in the film, were fictionalized or highly embellished versions of real events. Nonetheless, the film became a huge success in the United States and played a significant role in the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. It was precisely this movie that spurred the formation of the Second Ku Klux Klan in 1915. The leader, or Grand Wizard of the Second Klan, was William Simmons, a Protestant minister who founded this organization along with 30 other avid fans of the film. Interestingly, among these individuals were two elderly men who had been members of the original Klan's first generation. In this iteration, the objects of hatred were not only black people, but also Catholics, primarily because the members themselves were Protestants, homosexuals, immigrants, Jews, inevitably, and communists. The second Ku Klux Klan differed from the first in not only its choice of targets, but also in various symbols, attributes, and costumes. Members of the original Klan didn't wear white costumes. Instead, they used fabric masks or even sacks with eye holes and draped them in white. It was the creators of the film The Birth of a Nation who introduced the idea of the iconic pointed white hoods and white costumes. Members of the Second Klan adopted this attire directly from the movie, effectively turning it into a kind of cosplay. The Klan's leaders quickly established a monopoly on the sale and production of these costumes. Every new Klan member had to purchase one, making it a lucrative business for Klan leaders. Additionally, Klan members were required to pay regular membership dues and fees for initiation into the Klan. The Klan even began paying taxes to the state treasury. In addition to adopting the costumes from the film, another visually striking element was added: the burning of a massive wooden cross. Real Klan members didn't actually engage in this ritual. However, it was depicted numerous times in the film and the novel it was based on for dramatic effect. Despite being a work of fiction, it looked incredibly impressive. Thus, the second-generation Klan also started incorporating cross burnings into their gatherings. The Birth of a Nation film became the primary tool for recruiting new members into the organization. The peak of the second Ku Klux Klan's popularity was in 1925, when it boasted approximately 6 million members, the largest membership count in its history. In the future, no iteration of the Klan would come close to these numbers. This Klan declared its main mission as not only combating black people, Catholics, communists, but also championing morality among white citizens. They positioned themselves as defenders of white women and crusaders against immoral behavior, such as non-payment of child support and promiscuity. The Klan regularly held massive gatherings in secret locations, organized marches and parades right on the main streets of cities. There was even a Ku Klux Klan for women, which was quite popular, as well as a Klan for children, which organized something akin to summer camps to indoctrinate young minds and prepare them for adulthood in the Klan. The second Ku Klux Klan was somewhat less violent than the first and the third Klans, but they were not without their share of nefarious activities. In the early 1920s, Klan members brutally murdered a black man for having a relationship with a white woman. The police didn't pursue criminal charges against the Klan members, instead claiming the black man was at fault. Feeling a sense of impunity, Klan members increasingly engaged in acts of violence, beating black individuals, maiming adulterers, and attacking drunkards. They were also staunchly against alcohol and targeted other societal misfits. The public started to speak out against the Klan's brutality, and many members of the organization began to exit it. Initially, they had joined the Klan as role players and cosplayers, but as the group became more like ruthless terrorists, many left. Newspapers and public figures condemned the Klan's actions. FBI agents even infiltrated the Klan and published lists of its members, making their names known to neighbors and colleagues, which further accelerated the exodus of individuals from the organization. In 1925, a significant event occurred. The then Grand Wizard, or Klan leader named David Stevenson, was convicted of a heinous crime. He had kidnapped a young woman, subjected her to days of sexual assault and physical abuse, and she later died in the hospital from her injuries. This scandal led to the downfall of the Klan. People began leaving en masse. With the onset of the Great Depression and later World War II, the Ku Klux Klan completely dissolved. In the early 1940s, when the second Ku Klux Klan was already in decline and only the most extreme enthusiasts remained, comics about Superman emerged, depicting him fighting against this organization. In the comics, they were referred to as the Clan of the Burning Cross, but it was clear to everyone what they represented. These comics were just one aspect of the art that protested against the Klan. However, it wasn't just comics. Radio shows about Superman, which were listened to by children across the country, also began to expose the crimes of the Klan. The creators of the comics and radio shows even had their own spy within the Ku Klux Klan. This individual, Stetson Kennedy, was an opponent of the Klan and racism, and he infiltrated their organization to gather information. He regularly attended their meetings and actively participated in the Klan, collecting a vast amount of data about them. Kennedy passed this information on to the local police, but perhaps due to the police's ties to the Klan, it did not lead to the appropriate response. So Kennedy turned to the producers of the radio show about Superman and offered them this valuable information. The producers were interested and collaborated with him to expose the Klan's activities. Through radio broadcasts and comics, Superman began to mock the Ku Klux Klan and portray them in the most demeaning light. Kennedy also provided the creators of the radio show with all the passwords and secret symbols used by local Klan chapters. These passwords were then revealed on air. Klan members were shocked by this exposure and attempted to change all their passwords and symbols. However, Kennedy once again provided the updated information to the producers, who published it. The Klan was once again discredited and vilified in the eyes of society. In this way, comics and radio shows about Superman played a crucial role in bringing an end to the activities of the Second Ku Klux Klan. The third resurgence of the Klux Klan occurred in the 1950s, a period when the civil rights movement was gaining momentum. This movement was led by African Americans who were fighting against segregation in the United States. Segregation involved the physical separation of black and white individuals, even though they coexisted in society and were theoretically equal. However, they were divided in various aspects such as seating, stores, and public transportation, which were reserved exclusively for either black or white people. This segregation subjected African Americans to severe discrimination. In the 1950s, separate and unconnected cells of the Ku Klux Klan began to emerge once again. There was no central organization overseeing them, and even the formal name of the Third Ku Klux Klan was not under centralized control. These scattered cells became the most brutal faction of the Klan, engaging in acts of terrorism. They would bomb the homes of black individuals and beat them on the streets. They also targeted white individuals who supported black rights, bombing their homes as well. The majority of bombings occurred in Birmingham, Alabama, over several years, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of people. The Klan targeted black churches, their congregants, their vehicles, and their businesses. They not only attacked black individuals, but also anyone they suspected of having communist ties. Despite their violence, the Third Ku Klux Klan had a relatively small membership compared to previous iterations. At its peak in the mid-1960s, it had no more than 10,000 members nationwide. While the first and second clans portrayed themselves as defenders of morality and Christian values, this new clan attracted sadists, murderers, and even neo-Nazis who were inspired by Hitler's ideologies. In the 1960s, public intolerance for violence had increased significantly, even among some of the Klan's sympathizers. Acts of violence became socially unacceptable, even for those who supported segregation. Consequently, the government began to take vigorous measures against the Klan, and the FBI swiftly infiltrated their ranks with undercover agents to dismantle the organization. As distrust grew among the leaders of the Klan's cells, they suspected each other, even their closest allies, of being FBI informants. This internal suspicion weakened the Klan from within, contributing to its eventual decline. In the Third Ku Klux Klan, there was one particularly intriguing character by the name of David Duke. He was a prominent figure in a significant faction of the third generation of the Klan. Besides his Klan involvement, he was an ultra-right-wing politician who built his career on promoting anti-Semitism, conspiracy theories, racial intolerance, and more. Duke authored books that accused Jews of being responsible for various global issues and delivered lectures propagating these harmful ideologies. He actively spread hatred towards anyone who wasn't of Caucasian descent. Duke also served as an editor for several far-right publications and websites, catering to racists. His denial of the Holocaust was widely known, and he even wrote books on military preparation for a potential racial war. Additionally, Duke faced a brief prison sentence for tax fraud. Despite being 73 years old, he continued to engage in similar activities online. In 1976, a book titled How to Find and Keep the Man of Your Dreams targeted women, offering advice on being a good wife, finding a husband, and not imposing too much on themselves. It provided guidance on selecting clothing and cosmetics, and even delved into intimate subjects, including oral and anal sex. However, it later came to light that the author, Dorothy Vanderbilt, did not exist. Instead, this book was penned by David Duke, a notorious racist and anti-Semite associated with the Ku Klux Klan. He had maintained this secret identity, concealing his extremist views and activities behind the facade of an author specializing in cosmetics and sex. This revelation severely damaged Duke's reputation within the Klan, and he was subsequently expelled. The Klan chapter he led eventually disbanded as nobody wanted any association with him. Duke attempted to justify his actions at the time by claiming he was young and needed money, which led him to adopt this strange means of earning a living. However, this was just one facet of the complex and enigmatic character of David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the Klan.
The third generation of the Ku Klux Klan essentially continues to exist to this day. They do not have any central organization, and the number of participants in this clan is very, very small. This clan primarily consists of far-right individuals and even neo-Nazis who occasionally don traditional Ku Klux Klan attire and wear it to various far-right events, such as protests against immigrants, and so on. The largest clan chapters do not have more than a few dozen members. Therefore, the current Ku Klux Klan is essentially a gathering of fringe individuals who seek some form of attention in the United States. In reality, there are many more significant and popular far-right organizations. However, they tend to view the Ku Klux Klan in all its incarnations as nothing more than clowns who tarnish the reputation of the entire white race. Interestingly, there are even small Klan cells in other countries. So ends the story of what was once a powerful and terrifying organization. Although who knows, perhaps in the future there may be another fourth incarnation of the Ku Klux Klan. It's interesting to speculate who might be on their list of targets this time. Maybe, in addition to Jews and black people, they will add hipsters, vegans, avid cyclists, and electric scooter enthusiasts. But I sincerely hope that such a scenario never comes to pass.
Please, leave a comment about which organization you would like me to talk about in the next video. Your comments are not only interesting for me, but also help the video gain more views. So, please, write at least a few words on this topic. Additionally, continuing the discussion, I suggest you watch my video about occultism and the Third Reich. The video links will be available directly on the screen.